Today I will be comparing and contrasting the thematic similarities between two different texts. A classical text, The Diary of Anne Frank, and a contemporary text, Room by Emma Donaghy. Both books are in the perspective of a youth who is forced to endure isolation from the world by a negative force. However, the two texts differentiate in the time period they are being told, the reason why they are in confinement, and the conclusion to the stories. For starters, The Diary of Anne Frank is written by a real person. Anne Frank is a 13-year-old Jewish girl living in Amsterdam who has to go into hiding during World War II to avoid the Nazis. Frank and 7 others, including her family members, hid in an attic for almost 2 years before getting caught and deported to concentration camps. Otto Frank, Anne's father, is the only one of the 8 to survive. Anne's diary was later found and has become one of the most famous reports of the Holocaust today. On the contrary, we have a fictional story called Room, told in the perspective of 5-year-old Jack. To Jack, Room is the world. Jack was born and grew up in Room, a 7-foot garden shed, with his ma until they escaped. To Jack, Room is home. However, to his mother, whom he calls Ma, it is a prison where her rapist, known as Old Nick, had held her captive for years. After successfully escaping, Jack enters and starts to experience the real world. He gets used to all his new surroundings and finally lets go of Room. The first theme shared between the two is fear and mortality. Jack's mother doesn't know what her rapist Old Nick is capable of, so she's under a constant fear for herself as well as Jack. This is shown in the fact that she never allows Old Nick to see Jack to protect her from him. As quoted by Jack, "Nothing makes Ma scared, except Old Nick maybe. Mostly she calls him just him. I didn't even know the name for him until I saw a cartoon about a guy that comes in the night called Old Nick." Anne Frank is under a similar state of constant fear, but is not always facing her enemies. Anne is constantly under the anxiety that the Nazis might catch her, that she may be seen or heard, and from the constant bombings she hears from the Nazis. Anne expresses her fear in this quote: "Not being able to go outside upsets me more than I can say, and I'm terrified our hiding place will be discovered and will be shot. That, of course, is a fairly dismal prospect." The theme of isolation and confinement. Jack's mother has been kidnapped and locked away in the tiny garden shed for 7 years, losing all regular worldly interaction. Jack, on the other hand, is unknowingly locked away from the world, experiencing the early stages of his life confined in a garden shed. Jack's mother's anger towards being confined is exemplified in this occasion. Ma stops. She puffs out a long breath. "I need to hit something," she says, "but I don't want to break anything." "Why not?" "Actually, I'd love to break something. I'd love to break everything." Anne Frank similarly feels apathy like Jack and resentment like his mother from being constantly confined. Anne longs for a breath of fresh air and dreams about leaving confinement just like Jack's mother. Here's a quote from Anne describing her longing to be freed. "I finally realized that father, no matter how kind he may be, can't take the place of my former world." The theme of love and family. Surely the love exemplified in both stories played a major role in the survival of all the characters, even if it was for the time being. Both stories exemplify the tight bonds between the families. Jack and his mother's small family holds them together. Their love gives them strength to carry on and to not feel lonely. Anne Frank had a bigger family that was tight-knit and was ready to face death together. Anne's love for her family, specifically her father Otto Franks, helps her to stay strong. As well as the romantic love Anne experiences with Peter Van Daan brings excitement to her life for the time being. Love is expressed in this quote: "Whenever I go upstairs, it's always so I can see him. Now that I have something to look forward to, my life has improved greatly." The theme of time. Time goes by much slower when unoccupied in a room. Entirely all main characters express moments of despair and apathy as time, day by day, exceeds slowly in isolation. Jack's mother expresses the feelings described in this excerpt. "Next week, when I'll be 6, you better get candles." "Next year," says Ma. "You mean next year." Her eyes are shut. They always do that sometimes, and she doesn't say anything for a minute. The theme of wisdom and knowledge. Jack and Anne were both eager to keep on learning new things. Both of them were encouraged by their parents to learn and gather more knowledge and expand their wisdom. Regardless of being confined, Anne Frank's parents encouraged her to continue her studies. Expresses the value of this in the following quote. "Ordinary people don't know how much books can mean to someone who's cooped up." Many readers are attracted to Anne's wisdom that she showcases throughout her diary and her character. For a 5-year-old in confinement, Jack has learned much wisdom and knowledge from his mother. After successfully escaping, Jack is put into rehab with his mother, and many of the doctors and people around him were surprised by his knowledge and wisdom. Although he was a 5-year-old in confinement, Jack was always eager to learn more and gather more knowledge even after leaving room. The theme of society. Both Anne Frank and Jack are subject to the reality of society. Anne Frank becomes subject to society because of the Nazi regime in her society at that time. When Jack escapes confinement and enters the real world, he becomes subject to society's norms and rules. An example of this is when Jack escapes and someone mistakes him as a girl because of his long hair in this quote. "I'm so sorry, is your little girl okay?" Jack doesn't understand that the speaker is referring to him as a little girl and that people with long hair outside are usually female. The theme Bildungsroman. The definition of Bildungsroman is a type of novel concerned with the education, development, and maturing of a young protagonist. Both Anne and Jack come of age in confinement. For Anne, she gains a lonely milestone in confinement and gets her menstrual cycle. She also starts to explore her sexuality while in confinement. Jack, on the other hand, wants to learn every new thing he can because as a young child he's eager to. Jack's mother continued to nurse Jack even after he became a toddler. One of Jack's growing transitions is letting go of breastfeeding with his mother. Themes that relate to human nature stay relevant today because people in some way can connect to the themes. For example, themes such as love and family stay relevant and relatable to people because of how familiar these themes are in society. Themes that relate to human nature can be of interest also because of the abnormality of some themes to readers. For example, the theme of isolation would be of interest to people because majority of people are not locked away from the world for an extensive period of time. These themes make people interested to connect to what it feels like and to relate to human nature that is not common. This concludes our presentation comparing the themes between the Diary of Anne Frank and Room.